Hey everybody, welcome back to my simple astrology series. If you don't know me, my name is Tara All and I love astrology, and astrology has made my life better and I like to share it. So here I am doing that in one of the ways that I know how. So in this series of videos, I've been just going through each sign. And we have now reached Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is a fire sign. It is a yang sign. And it is a mutable sign. And so before we launch right into Sagittarius, let's just recap Scorpio for a second here, because everything in the wheel, from Aries to Pisces, is part of one big, huge field of energy that, we call life. So when we're working with astrology, we're just looking at different ways to understand the energy streams and the energy flow of life inside us and outside of us. So none of them operates in a vacuum. They're all part of one big circle, one big cycle, however you like to look at that. But when we're learning and when we're exploring and working with charts, we break it down. But to understand something in the wheel, we really need to understand what came before. And it's also helpful to know what's coming after, but specifically what came before, because the energy before in many ways is what the energy we're looking at now is reacting to. And for those of you who are used to working with evolutionary astrology, we see this especially in the Pluto placement. So for example, if you have Pluto in the second house, that deep soul's desire to explore and learn and grow through all the second house type stuff is in many ways a reaction to the previous experiences in the first house. So this brings me back to Sagittarius. The sign prior to Sagittarius is Scorpio. And Scorpio is a fixed yin water sign. Scorpio, and you can certainly watch that video to get more information on that, but Scorpio is like a deep dive. It's the deepest dive into the deepest truth to help empower ourselves to remove any obstacles to standing in our power, to knowing the core essence of what and who we are. So Scorpio digs deep. It confronts limits. It pushes taboos. It can be suspicious, and it can be like an investigator. Sometimes Scorpio, we say, is like the investigator of the zodiac, because it's always looking into the motive underneath. What does that actually mean? And it's also looking to merge with greater power sources to increase power. Now, the ultimate power for all of us is deep within us at our essence, but there are also many ways that we can join with each other. And this can be people coming together, because you can do more maybe as a group or as a partnership than you can do on your own. But it's also how you come together with, like, for example, I feel for myself, coming together with astrology, it is a merging of me with that art or that practice, which gives me more than I had on my own. So there's lots of different ways this can happen. But what I really want to focus on here is Scorpio goes in. It's fixed energy. It goes deeply penetrating into things, like a miner goes after gems, right? Deep into the earth to get to it. When we come to Sagittarius, we take that archetype of power that was established and strengthened in Scorpio, and now in Sagittarius, we take that out into the world and we do something with it. So
Scorpio rules the bowels, the intestines, and rules the elimination system, right? But those are like the inner system of ourselves, our guts, right? So strong Scorpio people tend to have, they have a lot of guts. And literally that sign is associated with guts. Sagittarius rules the hips and the thighs. So you take all that inner power, that force of power, and then Sagittarius gives it legs to run with it. We can now take it somewhere. So you can already feel like the shift in energy. And I'll mention this again, even though I'm sure I've mentioned it before, around the whole wheel, there's patterns. So Aries, the first sign, is yang. It asserts itself. It goes out into life to go after what it wants. The next sign is Taurus. Taurus is yin. It is open to receive. It attracts. It goes within. The whole wheel is that way. Each sign going from yang to yin, yang to yin, yang to yin. So in some ways you can think about, we go in, we go out, we go in, we go out. It's not that straightforward, but in concept, that's there. Let's see if you can see this little drawing that I have here. Let me see if I can get this so you can see it. Yeah, okay, cool. So cardinal signs are signs that initiate. Now, in the quadrant where we find Sagittarius, it's Libra was the sign that initiated that quadrant of experience. And this cardinal energy, if you want to imagine, in this case, I just put, you in the bubble as an example, but the energy pushes forward with cardinal energy. It initiates to move things ahead. So if you have a lot of cardinal energy in your own personal chart, you're likely to be an initiator. You're likely to get bored with things staying the same, and you want to start something new and move forward. That's the intention of cardinal signs, get things going. In the quadrant where Sagittarius is, what Libra does is initiate the relationships, initiate the partnerships, initiate the connections. Then in that same quadrant that we're still working in, the next is Scorpio. Scorpio's fixed energy. Fixed energy always wants to find value, meaning, and purpose to whatever was initiated. So in this case, now the energy where before was pushing forward to something new, all the arrows come in on itself or on whatever the thing is to give all the attention there, to stabilize it, to strengthen it, to make sure it can last, to do something with it. So it's a very different feeling energetically when you shift between what we call these modes or modalities. So now in the same quadrant, we move to Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the mutable sign in this triad. Mutable signs are all about getting relative perspective, and they're also about bridging from what was to what will be. So there's learning, adaptability, flexibility. Mutable energy is about going out to discover what did all this that I did before really mean? What's actually possible? What am I moving towards? So it gives us sort of like, inner and outer flexibility to move between things. Mutable signs are always transitions into the next cardinal sign. So you can see here with the mutable energy, so now we're going to go straight to just a Sagittarius here. Sagittarius energy, mutable, all the arrows are pointing out, right? So the energy is shooting outside of itself. That feeling, and this is true for all mutable signs, but then mutable energy, it can be scattered. It can be all over the place. It can lose focus sometimes because it's going in many different directions at the same time. But so much of Sagittarius, when we reach this point in the wheel, is about climbing to like the highest vantage point that we will ever reach in our lives. And this is personal for each of us. So, when you imagine your mountain, it doesn't have to be a physical mountain. And this can be whatever it is. But in the chart, where Sagittarius meets Capricorn, which will be the next sign that's going to initiate the next triad or the next quadrant, the mountain to me
is actually what Sagittarius reaches. And then it's Capricorn that takes everything from that new perspective, that new expanded consciousness, that new mountaintop of 360-degree view, and then takes it back down so we can make it useful, so we can give it in our special way to society, right? So we can do what Stephen Forrest always calls our great works, which is associated with Capricorn and that 10th house archetype. But Sagittarius is about, where are you going to go? You know, Sagittarius isn't about the end game. Sagittarius it's about the journey. So all these quotes that we hear about, whatever, it's in the journey, not the destination. All those existential types of things, they fit very well with the Sagittarian archetype, because Sagittarius is on a quest, specifically a quest for personal truth, to reconnect with the natural laws of nature and the universe, to find what really has meaning, and to explore the unknown. And this is the unknown inside ourselves. If you think of it as inside, to me, ourselves is not limited to inside this body. We have energetic bodies, and we have mind that is infinite, if you will. So there's all these different places we can explore about ourselves and how we understand ourselves to be in the universe, and all the different mysteries of the universe. So Sagittarius is very much associated with higher learning, all kinds of metaphysics, law as well, philosophy, really all these types of things that cross the fence into new territory. Because to really be doing Sagittarius, to really be in the Sagittarius or the Sagittarian zone, something about it's got to be unknown. It's got to be something that you haven't done before, you haven't experienced before. And so in those Sagittarian moments, what's so powerful about them is the seeking is really for, like I was saying, for what we truly are, for what life really is as it reveals itself in the moment, not as we tie into the past, like in a Cancer type of way, a moon Cancer type of way of tapping into our memories of what something means, because we associate it with something that happened in our past, which is just what we do all day long as human beings. Sagittarius is the archetype of freedom. So part of it is freedom. It's freedom from the past. Now, we use that for Aquarius and Uranus as well. But to me, they both have a flavor of that. The Sagittarius freedom comes in putting yourself in an entirely new foreign circumstance, which is why Sagittarius and its related house, the 9th house, have to do with foreign travel, right? Foreign acquaintances, foreign collaborations. Because when you put yourself in a situation that's foreign to you, you discover how you naturally show up to that situation without so much of the preconditioned stuff. For example, if I take a trip somewhere I've been 10 times before, it's not fresh and new to me, meaning I'm going to have old memories of it, old experiences, and maybe what happened, maybe what I didn't like, what I did like, maybe what I thought was so super awesome, and I go again and I expect that thing to be there just the same as it was before, which, that's so much of what we do in life. It's like we want to avoid the things that we had a bad experience with, and then we want to keep replaying in new versions of the old good experiences we had. But in those, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm the more that I am into my personal practice of life, the more I recognize that there's not good, bad, right, wrong ways to do things. There are certainly ways that are more difficult.
There are ways that can cause more collateral damage, but we're all doing what we need to do, no matter how we're doing it. The more conscious we become, which is also a Sagittarius thing, expansion of consciousness, the more we're aware about how life works, how we work, well, what's going on in the universe. The more we start to tap into that consciously, the more we can make choices that are in alignment with our true nature. And then the flow is easier. But before I jump into easy, because easy is where I want to go next, because there's definitely an easy archetype in Sagittarius and its ruler Jupiter, which I haven't talked about yet. But back to the foreign places. Yeah, so let's just say that now, instead of choosing to go on vacation to that place that you've been 10 times and you have specific expectations around, let's say you choose to go somewhere that you've never been before. Well, you can still put expectations on that. You could set up, a whole regimented tour of what you're going to see and how it's going to be. But that would be contrary to what Sagittarius wants, right? Sagittarius wants you to show up. And this doesn't mean you shouldn't book a room or something, right? So that's not what I'm saying. Although for some people, that is part of the freedom of the exploration, is to see where life takes you. It's to see when you're somewhere that you have no bearings, that maybe you don't even speak the language. You got to find different ways of being and different ways of connecting. And then you really do get to the nature of what we are. Like, if you can't speak the language, how are you going to communicate? There's lots of things that are more universal. Now, true universal truth comes in the Pisces archetype, but in Sagittarius, we're starting to get there because we're starting to expand the vision, right? We're starting to get outside of our old paradigms of this plus this has to add up to equal this, which, by the way, is a very Gemini thing, which is the polarity point to Sagittarius. For those of you who don't know, my south node of the moon is Gemini and my north node of the moon is Sagittarius. The nodes of the moon, if you don't know, in evolutionary astrology, the south node of the moon speaks to past life self-identities that you created to evolve, to grow in the ways that you chose to come onto the planet and incarnate and to move and shift. So, but in very simple ways, think of south node of the moon as our the karmic path, our past experiences, past selves, and it's kind of the energy that we tend to go to because we're used to doing it. Now, the north node is the evolutionary path of how we are becoming or actualizing more of what we are. So it's the path of the future self becoming now in the present. And I also think of it sometimes as the path of Dharma. So when we think about the polarities of Gemini and Sagittarius, and I'll use myself as an example because my karmic path, my past way of creating myself as a person to go about trying to do my soul's deepest desires has been very Gemini, right? Figure it out, get the answer, get the words right, figure the problem out, solve the problem. And as I move more into my North Node Sagittarius, again, the natural polarity to Gemini, it's about trusting intuition. It's about seeing a bigger picture. See, Gemini is very much about the bits and pieces, but the bits and pieces don't add up to the whole. Sagittarius reveals for us that the whole only exists as the whole. You can break it down and look at bits and pieces, but it's sort of like, I don't know, a human being. you cut me into pieces. I no longer function as my whole being. And Sagittarian perspective is about how all the parts are working together. So it's much more conceptual. It's much more broad-minded. And it's looking at the whole of something, and whether it's the whole of something like my body, or whether it's a whole group of people, or whether it's a whole organization, or whether it's a cow, whether it's a herd of, of some animal. It's looking at how that whole then explains the parts. So versus the parts adding up to the whole explains the pieces. So it's a very different way of looking at things. And I started to touch on this with intuition. Sagittarius very much so where the polarity point Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which has a lot to do with our reasoning mind. Mercury is not just limited to that, but in this context, let me just say that Gemini is very associated with the left brain, the reasoning part of our mind, logical, rational part. Sagittarius is more the right side of the brain, which is the more creative, conceptual, intuitive side of the brain. When you're working with those polarities, when you're working with anyone, if you have a bunch of Sagittarius, if you have a bunch of Gemini, if you have both like I do in the nodes of the moon, there is an integration on some level of mind happening, right? The balance between different perspectives and different ways of using our minds. When the emphasis is on Sagittarius, and of course this video is on Sagittarius, it's to open the right brain faculties. It's to trust the gut. Remember I talked about how the previous sign Scorpio ruled the guts? Well, once you've got in touch with that inner bullshit detector and that inner truth meter in you, which is very associated with Scorpio, you come to Sagittarius, you trust it, you follow it. And Sagittarius as well, it's ruled by Jupiter, and confidence is huge here. Having confidence that life has got your back, having confidence that whatever comes your way, you'll figure out what to do with it. So this isn't the kind of confidence that comes from like Saturn stuff. I've already managed that situation, so I can definitely figure it out this time, this is the confidence that comes in. I've got a sharp intuition. I've got a good mind. I've got good instinct. I'm on this planet for a purpose, right? There's a deeper part of me guiding me. Life is on my side. Life is with me. And so that no matter what shows up, even if I don't like it, even if I've never done it before, even if it terrifies me, which by the way, on the flip side of fear is excitement. So before I move into fear and excitement, because that's a big part of Sagittarius too. Yeah, it's trusting that in the moment, you'll work it out. You'll show up, you'll catch the cues you need to catch, you'll trust your inner guidance system, and maybe your external guidance system, if that's something you're developing, especially with Sagittarius. I mean, many of us with strong Sagittarius are on the metaphysical path, right? So astrology is a guidance system, not to tell us what to do, but to help us get aligned. So that's that kind of confidence. It's not that you've already got it all figured out. It's that you have what it takes to figure it out. Yeah. So this whole fear excitement thing, there are two sides in one coin. And so, a little bit of healthy fear it gets you alive. And you also know when things are really changing, when there's some fear, right? So If something didn't feel a little uncomfortable from time to time, you're probably not stretching, right? And Sagittarius, again, mutable sign, it's about stretching. I mean, we talked about getting different perspective and being flexible and learning and getting ready to move into the next thing. But there's almost like, in the mind, in the body, in the emotional body, there is a stretching that happens with Sagittarius. You had to stretch beyond what you've known yourself to be. So that can be a little bit scary because you don't know what's going to happen, right? But that whole piece would be missing if you knew what was going to happen. And one of the pitfalls that can happen here is if Sagittarius is a strong pull for us, like it is in my life, if I refuse to put myself in situations where I'm not sure what'll happen, or I'm not sure how well I will do it, or I'm not sure if I'll, meet the mark, then I'm living in an old way. I'm not moving into that future self manifesting now. And if you're watching this video, you want that, right? You want that. You want more of you now. So if Sagittarius is part of that path, that's it. Get a little uncomfortable. People with tons of Sagittarius energy, they can really be thrill seekers too. These can be like our skydivers and, the super deep diving scuba diver. I've been blessed with so many Sagittarian people in my life. And I look back, and even the people that were in my life before I was working with astrology, or even would have known to have this conversation in this way, I realized how many people were in my life showing me that energy, some of them destructively. I had a friend, one of my dearest friends in junior high and high school. He would do the craziest stuff. I mean, with like no worries. I mean, he wasn't the only person in my life that way, but I mean, this is the person who would jump off the cliff without worrying about maybe there'd be a rock underneath and you might split your head open, right? The one who would hit the gas pedal in the car when you don't know if that light's going to be red or green, but oh, whoa, and I've been in the car with him when he did that, and terrifying and exciting at the same time. And for my poor strong Saturn and my Cancer self, you can imagine there was a certain level of, oh my gosh, like, it's a good thing that I believe in a life, in a life that continues beyond this, or I think it would have been even more frightening. But one point in time later, when we got a little older, we had a conversation, and he mentioned to me, he's like, it's like there's a filter missing in me. The fear filter is missing. He's like, I know I should feel the danger, or I know I should feel the caution. He's like, but it's like that part's missing in me. And this would get into a whole different conversation here. But what I want to point out is that Sagittarius can ride that line, of having so much confidence and so much excitement for life and so much wanting to like jump into the whole next new dimension, that it either doesn't feel or doesn't mind the risk, because staying the same and staying boring and being the horse that's like tethered up, or even worse, being the pony ride horse, right? The pony ride horse that goes around and around, and another little kid gets on, and snots all over your back and whatever, screams and cries. That's like death to Sagittarius. Sagittarius needs to be on the move. It needs to be exploring the next horizon. And this doesn't have to always be travel. So not everyone with Sagittarius is going to hop on a plane, but lots of them do, for sure. We get our world travelers. But it can be inner journeys. It could be plant medicine journey. It can be exploring our inner psyche. It can be, but it's got to take you somewhere else. It's got to take you out of like the normal everyday. It's got to be something more. One of the Sagittarian go-tos is like, when things get like uncomfortable or boring or not what you like, or you're feeling super trapped in, or like an animal kept in a cage, which really can, it's interesting because none of us are just one archetype, of course, right? We've got all this stuff going on in us. So I've also had a tendency to attract people in my life, especially partners,
And I mean like lover partners, who will be attracted to me for a certain level of security. And then I can see the animal in the cage. And I can look back and see how I was such a part of that, right? Every relationship is two people, but I can see how there was a part of me so attracted to that Sagittarian energy, so attracted to that wildness, that just like do what you feel and express whatever, right? Sagittarius, I didn't bring this up, but can be, it's all about getting to the truth, right? So there's not a lot of sugarcoating. There can be just really blunt. Sometimes it can come across as harsh, right? Because it's like, oh, this is just how it is. And I'm going to express myself as I am, cutting through the crap. Which is funny again, because we look back at the Scorpio, right? Ruling the guts, ruling the crap. And then here comes Sagittarius is like, no, we're cutting right through it. But I see my part in that, of how, as much as I wanted that freedom, I wasn't ready to have it for myself yet. And I'm not saying that I'm all the way there, but I've made some moves within myself, give myself more freedom. And in that process, I'm able to give other people more freedom, because see, I would be very attracted to that wild bird, and then I would want to put it in a cage. And as I say that, it's sad, but I don't mean that to be sad. I just mean there was a part of me that, like, I loved the wild animal, but it was a little too scary if it didn't have some confinement. So part of my solution was, well, let's try to put it in some sort of a cage. And for me, a lot of that cage has been emotional, So my relationships have grown as I have moved through some of these things, but these are some dynamics you can see with strong Sagittarius, and doesn't do very well with that. Kills the spirit, So if you have strong Sagittarius, and if you try to fit in somebody else's cage, no matter what that is, try to fit inside, come inside someone else's fence and accept that as yours, even though there might be cool things happening inside the fence for a while, eventually it's going to feel like a trap. And there's going to need to be freedom. Now, I mentioned a little bit earlier about, for me, Sagittarius is about reaching the mountaintop. So Sagittarius is the archer. So important to know where you want that arrow to go. And it's easy with all that mutable, fiery energy to just sort of keep shooting all over the place. And like I said, it's all about the journey anyway. But there is a shift into the next energy, which will be Capricorn. And there is a need with Sagittarius to aim well, to aim at what has meaning, at what's true to you, and then to give it all you got to get there, without knowing what that's really going to be like fully. It's to me, it's more the Capricorn energy that takes it and says, okay, now we're going to take all that, everything. So think about this with Sagittarius, all the exploring inside and out, all the adventure, all the truth seeking, all the breaking through old beliefs to discover new beliefs, all the coming up with what is my personal life philosophy, which is a big part of what Sagittarius is figuring out too. Experiences of being in the moment, experiences of how life is actually happening. All that for each of us is different, because we're each different. But when we get to the top of that mountain, where we actually realize, okay, I think my exploration has gone as far as it's going to go. We hope it's at a place where, like, where we've reached a spot that now we have really meaningful, amazing stuff to share, to give back, to harness, to manifest in different ways, right? So that's why I say that we talk about oftentimes Capricorn as being the mountaintop. I think it is, but I feel like it's like the baton gets handed off at the mountaintop from Sagittarius to Capricorn. They work. It's everything that Sagittarius does in the transition to Capricorn sets it up for how successful it's going to be. So I guess I'll leave it with, journey well, and, just like the old existentialists say, take the path that's less traveled, but more importantly, take the path that's true to you. So when you know in your gut at a fork in the road that this is the one, do it. And even more so, if the fear comes up that maybe you can't handle it, maybe you're not good enough, maybe you're not strong enough, maybe you don't know enough. I mean, sometimes there's value in getting some more tools in the toolkit before we go on. But with Sagittarius, a part of it is just believing that you can do it. And it's cliche, but Sagittarius also is about following your bliss. It's a sign of levity. Fire lifts. And with Sagittarius, elementally, we can look at it as fireworks. It's a beautiful, bright display. And that's what we can see when we open ourselves wider to what's in and what's without. Okay. Thank you guys for joining me. And the next one will be Capricorn when I get around to it. But thanks for joining me today. Sagittarius is funny. I put this one off for a while, and I don't know if that's because I'm always working. I should say working through. I'm always living through my own Sagittarian light and shadow. And lately, I've been feeling that part of me that questions, how far can I really go? How good can I really do that? How far can I leave what I already know and what I'm comfortable in without freaking out or without falling apart? How open am I actually to leaving the old story and opening a new chapter? So I feel like it's been perfect timing for me to share it, and always a blessing to share time with you wherever you are in time and space. And as always, if you have questions or ideas or things you would like me to share on my little channel here, give me a shout. You can find me at taraall.com. Take care.